All right. So just glad to have you, back. And thank you again for meeting me this late. I know it's so random and shit, but you know, like I was saying, it would be remiss of me to not ask certain questions related to, how, Angel was depicted in the media, and also too, why I feel like you spoke about there being, club kids who were black, who were Latinx, including you. But I feel like those club kids didn't get the same amount of attention as
No,
white club kids and the white club
correct.
that were at the forefront. And you have pictures with other club kids who were predominantly white, but I even went on the Wikipedia page and your name isn't even on there. It's all the white club kids.
Yeah, yeah. It was a very white dominated space. I will say that. There was different parties though. It just depended on kind of like where you went, and the black and brown queer people had parties mostly at Webster Hall. So they did a
Mhm.
night called Queen, which was like it was the rival to Disco 2000 at Limelight. It was the same night, but it was by different people. So it was by Rain Voltaire, who is a Latinx producer at Webster Hall um, back then, and then hosted by a lot of black people, Tobel, Tina,
Lena
um,
Bradford, was she around? Like Girlina?
Garlina. Yeah, she was Garlina back then.
Hmm.
People like that mostly at Queen and at Webster Hall. It seemed to be that Limelight mostly hired people who were white or white passing. And
Mm.
luckily I mean, not luckily, but I have the privilege of being somewhat light skinned. So,
Yeah.
I was able to be in those spaces and not be questioned or or like there were some queens, Tobel was a big queen back then. Desire was like white
You came.
centric space for sure.
Mhm. And, one thing that I wished, I asked, so what was your, relationship with, the movies when they started coming out, like the Shockumentary, Glory Days, like these documentaries? Do you feel like they kind of humanized Michael Olive too much and didn't humanize Angel enough?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I guess it just kind of depends on which movie. I have only seen some of them. I don't normally seek out movies about it because it's like this was my life. I lived it.
Yeah.
I know what went on, and so I don't really have any reason to seek out the movies. I've seen Party Monster.
Hmm.
I believe I've seen Glory Days. I'm not 100% sure, but I went to the premiere of Party Monster in New York City when it came out. With
Mm.
all everybody went, and it was, and actually, excuse me, like James St. James was there. All of the queens came out for it. Like
Hmm.
almost like in a strange celebratory way of like, let's look at, like look at this great, fabulous movie about. It's not. It's something really fucked up, excuse my language, happened, and in a way it became something almost celebratory for some people, and looked at, like you said, in
Mm.
this light, like Michael Alec just, he just did so many drugs, he went crazy. Like I said, we all were doing drugs. No, everyone's guilty of it. Everyone back then was guilty. It was a big part of the scene. I didn't kill anybody.
Mm.
I didn't kill. So it's like it. I feel like that has to be a part of your person, that you're able to go out there and hurt somebody, because I could never hurt anybody, no matter what they did to me. I don't think I could ever hurt anybody, no matter how many drugs I'm on, or whatever. So yeah, there was definitely like this humanizing factor of like, oh, he just did so many drugs and that's why he did this.
Mm.
And Angel never got really talked about.
Mm.
Angel's a Latino person, and was never really explored, and how he even ended up being in the scene and being part of what was going on and allowed to be there. His
Mm,
entryway in was being a drug dealer, you know,
mm,
being a drug dealer, supplying drugs to all of these white club kids was his key to getting into that scenario. Because
mm,
otherwise, I don't know how accepted he was. He's much
mm,
more Latino presenting than I am, and so I feel like would he have even? I mean, even when he was in the scene, sometimes people talk shit all the time, and I've heard people say shit about him, when he wasn't around and stuff like that. So it's like people want you there when you're providing that service, right? Like
mm,
let's he's okay because he has coke or he has ecstasy or whatever, and so there's a level of classism for sure and racism,
mm,
you know that's inherent because that's just inherent to white people, unfortunately. But you can't escape that fact, and you hit it right on, you know nail on the head. Like, it was a very, very white centric space. The people that controlled the major parties, the major things that were going on, were all white people.
mm. And now let
Yeah.
me ask you this. Do you think, what was the role you feel like Peter Gation played with this whole, like Renaissance? Because in a way, when you were talking to me the last time about how kids from all over the country coming to the New York, was this in a way like a early foreshadowing of gentrification in the city, of white kids from all over the country coming to New York and displacing black and brown folks, you know? Was this like an early foreshadowing of that?
I mean, that's interesting. I never really kind of thought of it like that, but I mean, Peter Gation was the money, right? Peter Gation is the one who had the club, allowed the parties to be there, and paid for a lot of stuff. So,
Mm,
he paid for people to come, like I said, from other parts of the country, fly over, paying for people from, like, a lot of people from Austin, Texas, people from LA, Chicago. He was paying to come to the city and do like special appearances at like some of the parties, like Disco 2000, and it was part of the like catch of bringing people in. And I mean, again, yeah, all these people are mostly white because I think that was just like it was the culture that was promoted, was that this was like a white space mostly and a white centered thing in a way. In a way it was like this idea of like everybody's welcome, but in a way it wasn't true because it was more of like what service are you providing, and then you're
mm,
welcome, and then you're allowed to be in the space. you
mm,
know so it was kind of like a flip. You say one thing and then do something else, right? So Angel was providing a service to these people, to all of us, myself included, and so he was allowed to come and be in these spaces, because of that.
mm. Did you ever, feel like there were times where you might have been like, treated, differently because you were of Latinx experience?
I'll tell you, I had a lot harder times getting gigs.
Mm,
Like when I was going out, I was turning looks, and yet still I had to like basically like beg for gigs at Limelight. I had a much easier time getting gigs at Webster Hall. Like I said, Webster Hall was seemed to be more welcoming to people of color. I felt like that about certain places. Like if I wanted a place where I was going to be around black and brown people, I go to the Palladium. I would go
mm,
to Webster Hall. These places that had nights that were specific to like that sort of thing, Vogue nights, ballroom nights, and I don't feel like Limelight, in particular, any of the Peter Gation / Stephen Lewis places,
mm-hmm,
um, did anything like that. And
mm,
again, I don't know if that's an intentional thing or just kind of the way the cards fell, because
mm,
I'm not. My relationship with Peter Gation was not something that was like a close relationship where I can comment on what his thought process was. But that is just
But
kind of
he,
the way the cards fell.
but he was around y'all though.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I was at meetings with Peter Gacy. If you had an idea for a party that you wanted to do, and then Michael Alec would get you the in, and you would sit in a meeting with Stephen Lewis, Peter Gacy, Michael Alec, everybody around, talk about the party, talk about financial details and that sort of thing, how the party was going to get done, and then you know, and he was also often actually at the club too, like walking around and stuff like that. So you'd
Mm,
see him quite often there. But again, these people on the limelight side for me was just like these are just kind of people I worked with. It's not. I wouldn't say like this is like my immediate friend group because, like I
would you
said, there was
say?
like faction of the club kids, and so the ones like Michael Alec and the people who were like directly around him,
Mm,
I didn't really care for Michael Alec, and I say
mm,
it because I'm not afraid to say it. He was unhinged back then. He was never nice, and so I didn't like his treatment of me or anybody else that I knew. And so I
mm,
just kind of tried to distance myself from him, So my relationship with Michael Alec was like was strictly just like coworker. Like I
mm.
didn't party with him afterwards. I would be in the same rooms as him, obviously, but I was not like at all friendly with him back then. So,
And
but,
coworker
but
as in like a co-promoter, pretty much.
exactly. He was at the same parties. I'd see him, kiss, kiss, hello, hello. That's it. Like there was
God.
no I wasn't doing drugs with him in the bathroom. I had other people I was doing drugs in the bathroom with, you know. So like I said, it's funny that you bring some of this up because I really never thought of it that way. But in the club kid scenario, there was factions. There was factions and hierarchy within that. You know what I mean? And so
Mm.
yeah, all of the people who are at the hierarchy were like people like Richie Rich, who's white, Michael Alec, who's white, you
James
know,
St.
uh,
James.
James St. James, who's white. Right? I'm just trying to think of people or Amanda Lepore, who's white, and these are the
Susanna
top people, right?
Barnes.
The ones that you know. These are the people's names that you know the most. So what about like Desi Monster, who is Latin, right? What
Mhm.
about I mean, Desi Monster was throwing looks that some queens couldn't even take,
What about you
and he
though?
was iconic for
Yeah.
looks, iconic for looks.
And what about you
But
though
you
too?
don't hear
Like,
about that.
yeah. When we don't hear about you is especially, and that's one thing, like, because when I went on the page and I'm like, wait, why isn't Roro's name on this list? Because it even has like on the Wikipedia page of Club Kids, it even has the list of like, just names that aren't clickable that might not have a Wikipedia. You've been on, cooking shows on you was on Food Network, and you won the competition. You've, been a successful chef. So for me, it kind of seems like, weird that your name wouldn't be on that list.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
you've
again,
had
it's who needed to be at the top of those lists. I didn't have parties that were exclusively produced by me, like Michael Alley did. I didn't
I
have parties
understand.
that were like that. I had so many things go. I was working at Patricia Field in the daytime. I was going to FIT at night, Fashion Institute of Technology, and then I was going home making looks to go work in the clubs. The clubs to me were more just like kind of like to support my income. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, I love going out and dressing up and all of that. But it was really just kind of like more of like a work thing, a working thing to me, more than a socializing thing. I always, if I was at the club, I was working. I worked VIP ropes at Webster Hall. I cage danced at Limelight, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously there's pictures of me in books and magazines and all of those things. But
Yeah.
my name is not going to be on a Wikipedia page because it wasn't like party exclusive to Ryan Starr, But I
Yeah.
was House of Field. Everybody in House of Field knows me, you know, and so
Mm-hmm.
and that's an iconic house to be in. Patricia Field's an icon,
She
and
is.
so and she's the one who helped me, really kind of get started in all of this because I was cutting out of high school and I would go take the subway into the West Village, and do like a loop. I would get off at West 4th Street and 6th Avenue, and I would walk up 8th Street. And one of the first stores you hit going north on 8th Street is Patricia Field. And I
Mm.
would wander there and I would see drag queens and club kids. And I was probably about 13 or 14 years old the first time I went to Patricia Field. And I
Mm.
was going and I would like look around and I was like amazed. And I said to myself, I want to work here. I mean, I just like had it in my head, like this is it, you know. And then I just kept going there and going there. And again, like I had a lot of confidence. I still do, but I had a lot of confidence back then. So I just like would go and looks like make my looks at home, and I would change on the subway with my best friend, and we would go on the subway, change on the subway before we get to West 4th Street, come out on West 4th Street in our looks, and then go into Patricia Field. And I made friends with all of the salespeople, and I ended up making friends with one of the managers, Veronique, who was this like French American, gorgeous model type girl. And I told her, I said, I want to get a job here. And she's like, okay, what's your phone number? And then a few weeks later, she called me in with a bunch of other people to like, I guess, try out for a position that they had. And I went in and I was about 16 years old. And they didn't know this because nobody ID'd back then. Yeah, so that's how I got hired at Pat Fields, just from cutting out of high school and being confident, making friends there. And then eventually the assistant manager called me in. I got the job. And then I actually quit FIT for a little bit because I was like, I thought I was going to just work there full time and make my way into the fashion world that way because that's what I was determined to do was to get into the fashion world. And so I quit FIT for a little bit, but then I ended up going back and getting my degree after like a year or two. Um, but anyway, I worked there for, I think I want to say like 3 to 4 years, but I had like a really bad heroin addiction already by this time. So I was like not well and I was doing really fucked up shit. I was stealing from her. I was, you know, I was stealing cash out of the register because I was stupid. I was like a kid. I was like 16 when I started working there. No, I was sorry. I was 17 when I started working there. And so I didn't know even understand how like counting out money at a store worked or anything like that. So I'm like, oh, they don't know how much money's in this cash register. So I lift the $50. I mean, this is not something they don't know. Pat knows this. She
Yeah,
fired
yeah.
me because you know. So she brought me down in the basement. She goes, "I know you're stealing," and da 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 da. And I cried, and I got fired. But I needed to get fired because I was very deep in the depths of a drug addiction, and I was trying to hide it. And I thought I was so smart, and nobody knew, you know. And Pat was so great with me. She would let me babysit her apartment. She lived upstairs from the store, this giant loft apartment, back in the 90s. And she would let me and my roommate at the time, who is Corey Field, also House of Field, Corey Nunez. She's
Mm.
not an iconic kid, too. And
Mm.
we used to babysit her apartment when she was dating this woman, Rebecca Weinberg, and gorgeous, gorgeous model. And they lived upstairs and they would let me like babysit, and I would have parties there she didn't know about. And she would explicitly say to me, just don't have a party. And what would I do? I'd invite people over. And like, I'm in Pat Field's fucking loft apartment and I'm 17 years old. And I'm like, this shit is dope. Like, I have to have a witness to this, So I invite all my friends over and do exactly what she tells me not to do. So, but, we do what we do when we're kids, right? And so, but she
Wow.
was still always great to me. She even after she fired me, we remained friends, and she knew it was just like because, again, you can't blame a drug addiction for everything that you do. Like we can't let Michael Alec escape unscathed because he had a drug addiction or something. It has to be part of your personality. I don't know why, but something about stealing was part of my personality, I guess. And I just couldn't. I was a poor kid from the projects. I never had anything. If I had to have something, I had to steal it. I used to shoplift in high school all the time. I wanted a new pair of Doc Martens. I wanted a new, so everybody got this new cassette tape I gotta have. Everybody's got this new Walkman I gotta have, And my mom's poor as shit. And so how am I gonna get anything as a poor kid from the projects, right? I had to steal it. So, so me and Pat, we remained friends. We're still friends to this day. And so, yeah, I'm not going to be talked about on a page because I feel like what Michael Alley did eclipsed everything. Eclipsed
Mm,
everything. So everybody else's, like, my page in that book that my friend has in Limelight that I showed you with the green
yeah.
wig on, it just
Hmm.
says in the bathroom of the tunnel, 1994. Right? It doesn't even mention my name on it. But then you see the ones of Michael Alec in the same book or genitalia in the same book, their names are mentioned, right? And again, I don't know if this is a purposeful thing, but this is just how the 90s were. The 90s were bitchy. The 90s were about how bitchy you could be to each other. People were not always nice.
Mm.
It was like a bitch contest. It was like who you would see people out who were even like, like you're friends with or like you're friendly with, and you just like kiss, 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 hi, hi. Oh, my outfit's better than your outfit, and look at this. And da, da, da. It was just always about who could one up the next person, who could, be
Constantly
the
like throwing shade and stuff like that.
always, always. And so, a lot of times you didn't know if people were your friends or they were your enemies or they were both, like you didn't have a
Mm.
clue. And so, people treated being a club kid in different ways. People did it socially. Some people did it as like work. Some people did it as both. And like I said, for myself, a lot of it was just like work. I realized I could make money doing with that, and then so I had to be a very resourceful kid. I moved into Hotel 17 when I was 17 years old.
Did
So
Peter Asian, did he so was this after did you move into Hotel 17 after you got fired or around the same time?
around the same time, actually, because how I moved into Hotel 17 was I got emancipated from my mom when I was 16. I ran away from home,
Mm.
and I was working at Pat Fields already around that time, 16 to 17.
Hmm.
And the summer of when I was 17, um, I was working at Pat Fields, and there was this Queen Joey. I don't remember what her last name was. This Puerto Rican girl from the Bronx. She's fabulous, and she told me, "Oh, there's this hotel that you can live at. That is like where all the runaways and all the like gay, people live, and it's called Hotel 17. All the club kids are living there, and if you want a room, I will call up the manager." Because I think Joey had lived there at some point. He didn't anymore, but that he had, and that's how he got started, like on his own. And so he was like kind of passing along the info. And
Mm.
so um I called the hotel and I spoke with the manager, Billy Candace, who is a great great friend of mine. To this day I love Billy Candace. And and it really was just about like having to meet Billy and be fabulous, and then he meets you and he's like, okay, you could be in the hotel, right? And
Mm.
even within this hotel there was like this weird hierarchy where he lived on the very top floor, the eighth floor of the hotel. He had like a big suite where they had put together a few rooms for him, and so he lived on property. And so then when you moved in on a certain floor based on like your level within this is what I'm talking about, like bitchiness and hierarchy, right? So you moved in on a floor on a certain level from the beginning. So I moved in on the fourth floor, right? So anybody on the third, second, and first floor is below me in this hierarchy, and everyone on the floor
What?
above the fourth floor is above me. Yes, and you had to like perform things in order to get higher up in the floor. I ended up being living on the seventh floor by the end of my stay there. But
Perform
you
things such as what?
things such as sex acts. So if you gave Billy a few blowjobs, you might move up a little bit in the in the hierarchy, which was not a problem. He was very attractive, so it wasn't an issue. Or when I started on the fourth floor, the first few things I did, I would be in ads. He had ads in like Paper Magazine and like Time Out in New York, I think, and a few other places, magazines, like these ads that he would have for Hotel 17, and he would ask you to like be in the ad, and of course it's like you get copies of the pictures, you make your little portfolio, and you think that this is fabulous because you're a kid, and he knows that he should probably be paying you to do this, but this gains you points, right? And so also like I used to clean his room. I used to clean for him. I used to every day because I lived in the hotel I guess on the fourth floor. I'd come upstairs. I had my own key. I would clean his room every day, you know, and so there was points to be gained. And then the more parties you did outside, because Billy was very involved with the club kids. He took so many pictures. I don't know. I heard, and I don't know that this is true, that all of his pictures burned in a fire, but that's just what I heard. But Billy Candice used to take pictures because he was used to work the front desk at night. So I whenever we were leaving to go to the club, he was at the front desk and he kept the camera there. And he would take pictures of us. His pictures, old pictures of Amanda Lepore, me, Corey.
So let me ask you this. So was Billy a lot older than y'all?
I think he was probably about. We have the same birthday, me and Billy Candace. Our
What's that?
birthday is December 14th, but he's older than me, so I
Okay.
don't really know what year, but I want to say he was probably in his 30s when I lived there, and I lived there in my teenage years, like 17 to like 21-ish,
So,
22-ish.
so, so he was exploiting y'all.
Oh, for sure,
He was
for sure.
exploiting y'all.
For
Wow.
sure, but it was part of the. Like I said, it was this. This is its own world. You have to understand. This is like a little bubble that we all lived in, and all of us worked together in some capacity, either at Patricia Field, at the clubs. We lived with each other in some capacity at Hotel 17, at the Chelsea Hotel, you know. Uh, we saw each other out all the time. I went shopping with them. I was Amanda Lepore's shopping buddy. We were next door neighbors when I lived on the fourth floor, and we would go shopping at um there used to be a place in the meatpacking district that was like this it's called Lee's Mardi Gras. It was a
Mm,
old like for drag queens and transsexuals and
mm.
transgendered people. It had big size shoes and like wigs and stuff, and it was in the meatpacking district, which at that time was like a very dangerous area. So me and Amanda Lepore would go there together to go like look at shoes and corsets and clothing and shit like that. And so,
But I see what
there
you
was
mean now.
friendships to be made, and like it was all normalized because everybody did it. I'm not the only one. I'm not
Yeah.
the only one. Everybody wanted to be on, like I said, there was this rivalry and this like bitchiness. Everybody wanted to be on top. So as you move up the floors, you're gaining notoriety, you're gaining more let's say
Now,
favors you can get because you can get better drugs from people at the hotel. Everything was right there in the hotel. You can get drugs at the hotel. You can get people to make clothes for you, or if you made clothes, you can get people to wear your clothes. I had my first fashion show when I was 19 at Webster Hall. I actually have a DVD of it upstairs that my friend sent me. 19 years old with Richie Rich is in it, Wallpaper's in it, everybody, Astro Earl's in it, I'm in it, all of my friends are in it, everybody who lived at the hotel was in it, Amanda Lepore's in it. It's like 19 years old, this is the kind of shit I was doing, because it he exploited us in a way, but he also made things accessible to us because he had contacts at the clubs. Billy had contacts at art galleries. We did art installations. I remember there was one place in Soho when Soho was first becoming like an art centric place in the 90s. We recreated a hotel room in Hotel 17. I mean, I'm sorry, in the gallery. We recreated one of the hotel rooms, and Amanda Lepore just laid on a chase lounge and drank champagne, and that was like the art that the quote unquote art, that we did. It was like a weird time of where people were really like coveting club kid culture, and so we were allowed to kind of do really wild things that nobody ever questioned. You
Did
know,
did a lot of people from the ballroom scene stay at Club 17 too, or not really?
at Hotel 17, not really. Ballroom scene didn't really cross over with the club kid scene because again, the club kid scene was mostly for white kid. Genitalia was a rich kid. Genitalia was a was also very young. She's actually younger than me, and she was a prep school kid. And Michael Alec met her at a club and turned her out. And she was coming and partying with us, and then she would stay up all night, and then she would change into her prep school uniform, and a limo would come to Hotel 17 to pick her up to bring her to her fucking prep school on the Upper East Side. That's how genitalia came up in 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 the club kid scene. She's not she's not a runaway. She's just a rich girl from the Upper East Side. There
So
was
let me
quite a few
ask
like her.
so let me ask you this. So by turning out, you mean like he put her on to that culture?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
correct. Correct. And she was part of his like inner circle. She was one of the people that was very close to him, genitalia. It didn't really cross over. The black and brown people, I think, had a lot harder time escaping their realities and from where they I was very lucky. I was very, like I said, I had to be very resourceful. So I did a lot of things that I don't think a lot of people would just go out and do. I also come from a lot of trauma, so I didn't have a lot of boundaries. So I
Mm.
did, I did whatever I had to do to get what I needed, if you understand what I'm
I
saying.
understand because you felt like this was your only shot at finding a social circle because you didn't really fit into that ballroom world, and you also didn't really fit into that world that you came from of being from the projects and stuff like that. So this was first
Exactly.
time in your life where you were like, okay, this is my opportunity, my chance to find my circle, my tribe.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
understandable. It's understandable. Yeah. That
Yeah.
that's definitely understandable.
Yeah. So that's, and like I said, all these people, it sounds so crazy to talk about it now and say like you had to go through all these hoops at the hotel to be, but like I said, we were just living and it was just part of the culture.
Yeah.
And but I got to do a lot of really cool stuff. I got to be in a Diesel jeans ad that hung in Times Square. I got to be in movies. I'm in the end of Tu Wong Fu as an extra in the background. But I thought these things are fabulous because I'm a teenager. I'm getting pictures taken by Ellen von Unworth, a notorious portrait photographer, out there. I'm in magazines. The first issue of Dazed and Confused magazine I'm in. It's like all of these things when you're a young person, you're wowed by it, especially a poor young person. I remember going to Michael Alex high rise and being like, I've made it. I've made it. I'm in this gorgeous high rise in the middle of New York City. I'm not in the projects. I'm sipping wine and chatting, and this is the life I'm supposed to have and be in and not be at the projects. And so
I
you're
mean,
easily fooled by a lot of things when that's happening.
I mean, it makes sense because you're coming from the projects, like you said, and you're very young. And so you're constantly, are surrounded by like stimuli, like being around all these famous people, constantly having, all these drugs at your whim.
Yeah.
Like being told how, fabulous you are, being on TV, being in these ads, like
Yeah.
famous people coming to you for inspiration. So it's
Yeah.
definitely like something that, makes a lot of sense why you and a lot of other people gravitated towards it and stayed in it even if it wasn't all the way healthy or conducive at the time to like your well-being.
In a funny way, it was more healthy than the environment that I was coming from. And
Really.
it sounds crazy, but it was more healthy than where than the hellhole that I grew up in. So, like to me, like I said, I'm thinking, oh, I made it, I did it, I escaped, and I'm really fabulous. And like you said, it's being reiterated all around me. I'm being asked to be in ads in magazines, being asked to be take photographs, being asked to, be in art shows and this and that. I mean, I got to party with people that were famous, like Bjork, riding in limousines with Bjork, because Bjork was friends with little Kenny and she loved the club kids. So anytime she was in New York in town, she was part of our group going out in the limo. She'd get us a limo and we'd ride out, but she'd do all our drugs and then not buy any, which annoyed the fuck out of me because I'm like, bitch, you're the one who got all the money. Like, we're the poor club kids, but it's like part of the experience, right? So
Yeah,
she was somebody we partied with a lot. Like it was just, and we were already influencing culture, and we didn't even, I didn't even really pay attention to that. It was like fashion shows were a lot of people in fashion, like Jeremy Scott and like Moschino and things like that. Back then, were taking inspiration from things that we were doing and like what we were like the looks and the, it was already being put onto like Fashion Week and stuff like that. And so, you know, it's exciting when it's all around you and it's blowing up around you and you really feel like things are happening, like you've done it, and so
yeah.
that's where I was.
So, what is your relationship like now with Patricia? You still talk to her from time to time?
Yes, and I've seen her, around, and like I moved to Portland though, like about 13, 14 years ago. And
Mm.
so like I'm involved in a whole nother thing now, because that was a long time ago and I haven't lived in New York in a long time. So a lot of the people that I know from back then, I just know via like Facebook and when I was on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all that. I have not been back to New York. I know that they've had like reunions and gotten together after at places and stuff like that. But Amanda Lepore was in town recently. I did see her recently, and so it's kind of like that right now, very casual,
Mm.
because that part of my life is long since passed. But the people that I mostly hung out with were the people who lived at Hotel 17 because it was easy for us to like coordinate, get together, and go out.
And
So
who
it
were
was
those people?
who was that? That would
Yeah.
be like Richie Rich lived next door to me on the sixth floor. So Miss Vulva, she lived on the sixth floor also. Farron Smothers, who was like he was a videographer. He now works for Wow Production, does like RuPaul's Drag Race, but he used to document everything with his video camera. Because back then we didn't have phones with cameras and video, so I have very few photographs. I have very very few like things. Like it's funny, I come out in a book and then I see it and I'm like, oh shit, there I am. But it's like I don't really have a lot of physical stuff from back then because we just didn't have that technology. So he came out and used to video everything, and that was fabulous because then we'd watch it in Billy's room, and Billy used to take a lot of photographs, so he'd have like slideshows in his hotel room, and we'd all smoke weed and look at our looks from the week, and Kiki, it was fun, and so like I said, I don't know. I heard his slides got burned up in the fire, but I'm not sure if that's true or he just doesn't want to share them with people
Mm.
for whatever reason. But he had a very good record. He could have probably made a bunch of books out of it. He had so many of everybody, anybody you name, he had a photograph of it, you know.
Wow.
Because almost everybody lived at Hotel 17 at one point or another. It was like the drop off point, for where we all kind of start out, get get protection, get your family, get and be together with like-minded people, So
How long were you at Hotel 17 for?
I want to say about 4 years, maybe
Mm.
maybe a little bit more than that. I had times where I left and then I came back to the hotel because I was really trying to escape my drug addiction, and so the hotel really was not a healthy place for me
I
to
can
try to
imagine.
stay. So, I mean, I stayed at the beginning when I was trying to get clean, and then eventually I realized I couldn't continue to live there and not do drugs. So, I think in total I want to say about 4 to 5 years.
Mm,
About 4 to 5 years, because I lived there right when I ran away at 17, got emancipated. I lived there probably for about 3 years, and I left, and I came back, and I left again, and came back. So it was like, I was trying to survive, and I realized that this is like not a healthy place to be with everybody who there's a lot of heroin addicted models who live there. We had a model who died there from an overdose. So it was like it was just everywhere. Like I said, you can go anywhere in the hotel and get anything you needed, any kind of drugs, any kind of. There was not even a reason to leave the hotel.
mm,
And then if you did need to leave the hotel, it's vicinity of being right next to the Lower East Side. Hotel 17's on 17th between Second and Third Avenue. You just cross over 14th Street, walk east a block or two. You're gonna hit a spot at least one or two or three or four.
yeah,
So it was very easy to like, oh, there's nobody available at the hotel. I'll just walk up the block. So it's just like it wasn't healthy, for me, and I was dealing with mental illness as well as drug addiction. So it was really difficult for me to be there and remain clean no matter how much I wanted to because I loved living there, but it was just not conducive to my health and me being healthy.
yeah. No, totally. Damn. I mean, it sounds like you really had that 90s New York City experience, when it comes to just like, when people talk about that old New York, um, how liberating
Yeah.
it was, but also how dangerous it was, but also how
Yeah. I
fun it
say
was.
gritty. It
Yeah.
was gritty. It was gritty. It's like, but that was the fun of it.
Yeah.
Now I
It was
hate to
like a
be like an
fun
old
hell.
person.
Yeah.
I don't want to be an old person and be like, oh, back in the day, but like, back in the day, it used to be being gay, being queer, having a queer gender identity, being trans. This was all subversive. This
Hmm.
was all stuff that we lived in our own world because we had to. Like I said, we had our bubble because if we venture outside our bubble, that was more dangerous. We can get hurt, we can get beaten up, we can get even killed, right? So we all stay in our bubble and we all pretend to like this is the world, and you ignore everything. That's why I think Michael Ali thought he can kind of get away with what he got away with because it was like we weren't in this bubble, and in this bubble he was on top, and so his group was on top. So in the hierarchy, so you almost think like you're king of this imaginary land, that you can get away with this
And also
crazy
too,
thing.
yeah, and also too, Angel, like you said, was a brown person who was looked at as expendable.
Exactly. His service was more important than him as a
His
person.
his service, yup, his service.
It could have been anybody. It could have been as long as you had what they needed, that's what was important. So that's why he was allowed to exist in those spaces. That's why he was allowed to exist in the world of the club kids because he was, like you said, you look at all of the people, it's mostly white people, and like you said, the black and the brown, we're not talked about. Our names are not on the websites. My name in the book is Tunnel 1994. But other people, their name is the name. Somebody says Amanda Lepore, you know exactly who that is.
Yeah,
Somebody says Richie Rich, you know exactly who that is because they were allowed to advance easier, quicker,
yeah.
faster, better than we were, you know?
I forgot to ask you too, when you went
Yeah.
to go get your money, from Michael, and you were also suspicious about everything going on with Angel from the hearsay, was there was a third person living there with Robert and with Michael, right? And he was the son of a famous like screenwriter, right? What was his name?
Uh, his name was Daniel, but I don't.
Daniel, yeah.
I'm not familiar with him because so I believe that Daniel might have been Michael Alec's boyfriend. But
Mm,
Michael Alec was like would date everybody for like a month, and then she's a whirlwind. So you're
yeah,
dating for a month, and then you're done. It was another boy toy person that
yeah.
was one of Michael Alec's boys, as we say. I don't know where he picked them up from or what, but I don't really have any interaction with that person, and so I couldn't say like full name because I don't really know
I'm
uh
asking
what his part.
because it said that he had something to do with the murder of Angel that day, as well as his father, who was a prominent person,
Covering up.
basically, got him to speak with the police and pinpointed Michael and Freeze. And then that's how he got off and wasn't included in, indictment and going to jail and
But
prison.
again, it's all sensationalized,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know how much truth there is to that. Like I said,
Mhm.
I just know him to be one of Michael Alec's boy toys, and I don't know what his full relationship with Freeze and Michael was, and Michael Alec had lots of people coming and living at the apartment and not living at the apartment, and blah 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 blah. It was another kind of landing pad for runaway boys from Staten Island, that sort of thing. And so I don't know exactly what that person's, and I don't know. I wouldn't believe everything you hear because,
Hmm.
like I said, a lot of stuff is sensationalized. So I don't know enough about that part of it to, name that boy. When I went to Michael Alec's apartment to get my money, Michael Alec opened the door. Nobody else.
He wasn't there or anything.
I don't know because I did not go into the apartment. I stood in the hallway. I did what I needed to do and I got the fuck out of there because, like I said, you know, your brain must be triggered somehow by what a smell like that is. And immediately when I smelled it, I knew something was not right and I knew it clicked in my head. And so you go into fight or flight at that moment. And so me being a kid, I went into flight. I didn't do any more investigating at that moment because I was like shaken up.
Hmm.
Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what you think you know everything when you're that age, but you really
Yeah.
know nothing. You're a baby. And so I didn't know what the fuck to do. I hightailed it out of there, you
Mm.
know. I wasn't about to go into the apartment. I wasn't about to see if there was anybody there. He did one of those like open the door a little bit.
Oh, he
Looked at
didn't open
and he
it
looked
wide
like a
up.
mess. He looked like a mess, and I didn't want to interact.
So he didn't open it wide up like, what's up? He was like
No,
behind with
no,
the
no. I
uh
was banging on the door for a while. I could hear music playing really loud, which is a usual thing.
yeah.
So a lot of times, like I said, he was having after parties at his apartment,
Hmm.
after parties. Like basically drug fueled parties after the clubs were all closed, nowhere else to go. Save the Robots is done. So you go to Michael's house and he has all the drugs and the drug dealers there. And you party there. So it's usual to hear like this loud music. And I had never actually been. I've been to Michael Alex place maybe like 3 times or so. Like I said, I didn't care for him. So if invited to his apartment, I probably would not go because I wasn't interested. So when I showed up and banging for a while, he finally opened. He just kind of does one of those, and then we talk for like 3 to 4 minutes, and that was it.
Mm.
That was
What
it.
was the reaction after you left? Were you like scared? Did you tell anybody? Yo, I think he killed Angel.
Well, first thing I did was I got back to the hotel because I needed to get somewhere, where I could feel, my safety or whatever. Because I was so scared in that moment. Like, not that he's gonna hurt me because I could handle myself, but
Yeah.
just more like this fear just overcomes you. This fear just overcomes you. And you don't really know what what to do, honestly. And so I'm not saying I like went and saved the day or anything because I didn't. I did not. And I wish that I did. I wish that I had been able to, make something happen like that. He didn't get arrested for like a few months. I think it
Yeah.
might be 3 to 4 months before he got arrested, maybe even more than that. I don't remember how long it was, but um, I wish that I could have played a bigger part in, getting him arrested. In the end, he did get arrested, right? But
Yeah.
you want to be the hero, but I'm not the hero of this story. Like
And
I'm just speaking like
uh,
I just want you to know I'm speaking from like a witness standpoint to all of this. Like I said, I was not Michael Alex inner circle. I'm not. I only know what I experienced,
mhm.
and I couldn't speak on things that I don't know about, like that third person. So I
I
know,
appreciate that though.
I know what I know, and that's it. And I'm only speaking about it because this is just a piece of a larger story.
Mm.
I don't want people to come away from this thinking like that the club kids were just like this vicious gang of gays or something like that. That there was, when you're young, as everyone was, and you're just trying to find your community, find your family. Everybody's coming from trauma. Everybody's coming from places of not being safe, not in their homes, not being safe at school, not feeling accepted. All of those things together put you in a certain place where you almost are able to be victimized
Mm. You say
easy, more,
you
more easy.
are or you aren't able to be victimized.
You are because you're
Oh.
you're in a state of already being victimized. Like I said, some things almost look attractive,
Mm.
not realizing that it's not really better than where you're coming from. You know, but
Mm.
I don't want people to think that this was just I had a lot of belonging in the beginning.
Mm.
I had a lot of community in the beginning. I
Mm.
had a lot of hope of succeeding in the beginning because I felt, you know,
Mm.
accepted and in this group of people who were like-minded and weirdos just like me, queerdos or whatever you want to call them. And so
Wow.
this it was more attractive than where I was coming from. And I want people to know this was a landing spot. A lot of people made their way up through this and have been successful beyond myself.
Mm.
Amanda Lepore is wildly successful
Yes.
in her own right. Richie Rich did well for himself for a while there. Wallpaper is doing exceedingly well and has a did a whole photography book on the club kids because he also used to do a lot of photographing. I know my friend Sprite, who also took a lot of photographs back then, is doing quite well. Corey Field, all these people, Sophia Lamar,
What do
everybody's
you
doing.
think? What do you think Angel would be doing now if he was still alive?
I would think Angel will be one of the successful ones for sure. Because Angel was like me in a lot of ways, and I'm like him in a lot of ways, of being, you know, this queer Latino person from a place of that's not welcoming to your being, and then infiltrating your way into a group that's not necessarily, brown person friendly either. And so
Mm.
there's a feeling of being special when that happens, or at least, succeeding in some way. And so I think he was very resourceful, and I think that he would be one of the successful ones. Now, what that would be, I don't know, but I know
Mm.
that he wouldn't be someone whose name has faded, hopefully, from. It's unfortunate that this is how we know his name.
Mm. What do you
He was one of the sweetest person I ever met. He was just always had a smile and something to say,
And he had
and
looks too.
oh yeah, oh yeah,
He had
oh yeah.
looks.
He was very fond of like the bondage. Like he had these giant wings he would wear everywhere, like giant. I don't even know. Maybe he made them because a lot of us made our looks back then. I don't know, but they were huge and they would go down. And then you get in the cab, you could put them down, and then when you get there, they just come out, and it was
So he could
crazy.
move them.
Yeah,
Let me ask you
And then he
this.
had, and then he would wear like these giant platform boots that gave him another foot or two above if you weren't wearing platforms. So you like look up at him and he just like comes out with these wings. Yeah, absolutely.
He had the Mohawk look, the Liberty spikes,
He
right?
did that at times, but he mostly would do like kind of like domination looks, like a lot of leather and those like kind of like biker hats and
Gotcha.
suspenders and leather, kind of almost like a skinheady like leather look a lot of the times with the wings, which I always thought was a cool juxtaposition of the two, like, soft for the feathers and hard for the leather. It's kind of like a, yeah, I always thought he looked great. And like I said, a very sweet guy. And it's unfortunate what happened. And, I'm glad we get to talk about it. And, there's others out there who, I hope that we can inspire and let them know that this all in all was a good thing. It was a lot of fun. It was I had a great life doing that, and it was definitely a channel for me to get away from the things that I needed to get away from. So had it not been for places like Patricia Field, the Tunnel, Limelight, Club USA, Palladium, these became my homes. Webster Hall. This
Mm,
was my home. Hotel 17. This is where I lived. This is where my family was and my friends were. And I was able to escape the trauma. And like you said, I became something after that, you know, because I had to fight my whole life to get to where I'm at now. And that was just part of the fight. That was just a small part of a bigger battle.
mm. Wow. What's something that you want people to take away from this interview, about you yourself as far as like your story?
Well, I've been writing my book, and within doing that, it started out as like trauma therapy for me. I started writing short stories about things that happened to me a long time ago that I've been exploring since being in therapy and dealing with my mental illness.
Mm,
Um, Within doing that, it became something bigger. It
mm,
became, I realized that this was a cultural influence and just so happened to be in the time period that I lived. And
yeah.
I want people, I don't want it to be a story of like sadness or like, oh, I regrets. Oh, I wish that I didn't do. I want it to be a story of like a bacchanal story that inspires you and makes you want to go out and just fucking do it. Do
Mm,
it. Have confidence. You got to be your own biggest cheerleader.
mm.
I look at myself in the mirror every morning and I go, damn, I'm bomb.com.
Can you speak to, getting on Chopped and being in the food, being on Food Network and winning that competition and like, you know, kind of because I feel like that's a great part of your story as well. Like I wanted to touch on the last time we talked, but I know we got so caught up in inspiration and Lee Bowery, and we were talking about looks, and we was talking about fashion, we was talking about all that type of. That's why I wanted to do a part two to get like.
But we could always do a part three also.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true.
That's kind of like what I was saying about my book. Like it just started to become so much bigger because
Yeah,
I'm realizing that I did go through so many different things and
you
so many
did.
parts of my life. So yeah, I mean, winning Chop was actually right when I was coming out to Portland. We
Hmm.
drove here from New York in a van. Me and my husband just got married, and we had come in to a little bit of money because Mario Batali, I don't know if you heard of him, a restaurateur, is who we worked for back then. And so there was a class action lawsuit against him. And we, even if
Sexual
he won,
harassment.
for many things, that's just one of them. So we they won the class action, and even if you weren't part of the class action, you got money. So we got a little
Mm.
bit of money. We had just got married, and the thing was like, do we move further out into Brooklyn? Because everything is being gentrified. At that time, we lived in Bushwick, which was now is the place to live, but at that time was not. And so we were like, or do we just like move somewhere completely foreign and try to make a better life? So we moved here with that money. And as we were driving across country, I had tried out for Chopped when I was living in New York because a bunch of chef friends of mine had been on it. And it's its own little community, the restaurant world. And so I knew people that had been on it, lost people who had been on it, won. And so I had tried it a few times in New York, but I wasn't reading well on camera. I was very nervous. I don't know why, but I so it was kind of uncomfortable. And they were asking a lot of questions, and so I wasn't reading well on camera. They didn't take me. But then when I was driving out here, I got a phone call from them, and they were like, "Oh, we want to bring you back for another tryout." And I was like, "Well, that's lovely, but I'm 75% on my way to Portland already, so I don't live in New York anymore." And at that time, they were only filming in New York. This was like a very early season that I was on, and so I was on the first Halloween episode that they ever had. So they said, okay, yeah, well, if we come, we're planning on expanding, coming out to different cities, and if we come out to Portland, we'll get in touch. A few months later, my first year of living here, they came out to Portland and they got in touch with me, and then I realized I have to practice for this, like interviews to read better on camera because I just want money, honestly. I was like 10 grand more could add to we just moved here. We need a new bed, we need a new couch, we need curtains, we need shit, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I just want to win some money. So my husband, Gary Huddleston, who I love dearly, has been my husband 13 fucking years this in a week, January 13th.
Amazing.
He made a bunch of flashcards for me. He interviewed me like as if he were the interviewer, and we came up with like funny things to say and blah blah blah. And so then I blew the interview out of the water, and then
Mm.
they flew me out to New York, and I went on the very first Halloween episode they had because in the interview they asked like, "What's your favorite holiday?" And I was like, "Halloween," and then I kind of knew in my head that's what was going to be the bag. They didn't tell me, but I suspect it. And then
Yeah.
I got there, and the next day after I got there, we started filming. It was an 18-hour shoot we filmed
Mm.
for, and I knew I was going to win. I knew from the minute you could tell when I walk out that door in that video, I'm doing like a catwalk walk, like I'm in a fashion show or some shit. And so I knew I was gonna win, and I just like when I put my mind to doing shit, I just do it. So I treat my husband helped me immensely because he just like got like a dictionary, like a culinary dictionary, made a bunch of flashcards, so that way if I got something that I didn't know what it was, I would know what to do with it. So
Mm.
studied for like I also did 2 weeks of studying with a pastry person who I made friends with when I first moved here, Lexi Eckstein. She was a pastry chef, and so for 2 weeks I went over her house. She taught me how to. I made a microwave cake, I believe, in that episode. So
Mm.
she showed me how to do microwave shit so I could get it done fast, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I was very nervous in the dessert realm because it's not what I do. I'm an excellent cook, but
I just want to thank you so much, just for being so candid, for being so real, for being so raw. Cause as you can see, like from the videos I've been posting about, you know what I'm saying. Just I like for people to just be real, and
yeah.
that's honestly what you've been given this whole time. So I'm just grateful for you, your story, and you just sharing it with me.
Like there's good with the bad, and I want that's really what like you asking what I want people to get out of it. There's good with the bad, right? And so no
Yeah.
matter we had a fight back then, everything was subversive, everything was hidden. You couldn't be gay, walk down the street, hold hands with your boyfriend, any of that, right? So our fight for all of that, all the marches that I went to, all the, all the ACT UP rallies I went to, and all the places, fighting. We fought for all the queer people now, especially the brown, the black,
Hmm.
the disenfranchised, the one, we fought for all of everyone to be here right now. And I want people to know that, that we did that fight, because I don't think that a lot of younger people give enough respect or give enough props to the people that came before them, unfortunately, because they have the luxury of that. Like, I didn't have the luxury of that. Everyone I knew died of AIDS. So I didn't have the luxury of having like older gay queer elders to like guide me and show me and tell me, right? But know your gay history. Know what we did as a movement, as a cultural movement, and
Mm.
and know stuff. Like, I love listening to your playlist, because you throw in shit like that. Yeah, you should know as a DJ. Like, you should know. All over your face, that's my jam. That's my jam. That's my fucking joint. So like, you should as a DJ. But like, I feel like queer history is getting lost.
Mm.
The easier it is to have access to it, it's getting lost because of the advent of the computer and Google. You don't have to know anything. If somebody mentions something, you can just say, okay, I'll go look that up when I get home.
I also feel like not enough people are speaking to people from your generation, from Gen X, and it's like crazy because, all of a sudden I feel like a lot of people from your generation are dying right now. Like, a lot of people are passing away. A lot of people are, nowhere to be found from
Yeah,
Generation X, and Generation X is already a small generation because a lot of y'all died from, AIDS. A lot of y'all died from drugs. A lot of y'all died from, the
yeah,
crack epidemic and stuff like that. So I think it's
absolutely.
important for, us to reach back and speak to you so candidly. And that's why, like, I, really am selective with who I speak to and who I get my stories from because, you know, it's about preserving the history. So with
Well,
that,
I'm glad you got me and you got a voice that comes from a different perspective of
most
just like
definitely.
the white cisgendered gay gays, because that's
Mhm.
not the only story that we should be telling. You
No,
know, we should
no.
be telling, as brown people, we should be telling the stories of our elders, of our, people who before us. Mona Foote just passed during COVID. Mona Foote, one of the craziest black drag queens I ever knew in my life. You look her up. She's in all the movies. She's in Tu Wong Fu. She's in um, every gay movie out there. She's in. She's fabulous. Black queen, and she passed. And like, one of the last people I would have thought would have passed, 'cause she's in great shape. She like worked out. She looked great. And I don't even think people know who Mona Foote is, and that's a sad thing. She looked brick 90% of the time. She didn't care, because that was part of it, but that was the whole bag. She was great. And people need to talk more about these people.
Mm.
Like you said, I'm not mentioned anywhere. I'm not mentioned anywhere. I did a lot, but I'm not mentioned anywhere. Mona, same thing. Gerlina, you know,
Yeah.
it's like these are people we should be talking about. These are people who have not only infiltrated the mainstream and became like, part of the culture, but changed it
Mm.
and allow for us to have people like Laverne Cox on TV, and other India Moore and other, black trans people and black, and brown, just people who are gender nonconforming. And it's just like, I always felt so alone growing
Mm.
up, and now everybody has the luxury of not feeling that.
Mm.
That's an amazing thing. Okay, it's up. I made the salad and everything. Okay. All right. I got to run.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
man.
And absolutely, you want to talk again? I always have time for you.
Most definitely. Yo, thank
All
you
right.
so much, Roro.
All right. I'll
Enjoy
talk
that
soon.
dinner because it sounds good.
All
All right.
right. I'll see you later.
See you later.